Welcome to PeaceTV's newsletter. The UK Ministry of Defence has confirmed that the UK is supplying Ukraine with long-range Storm Shadow cruise missiles, which are expected to help Kiev turn the tide of conflict with Russia. We can't just stand by and watch. Russia must understand that it is their actions that compel us to supply Ukraine with such weapons. The aid of this weapon system will give Ukraine the best chance to defend itself, British Defence Secretary Ben Wallace said on May 11th when confirming the news that London had transferred Storm Shadow long-range cruise missiles to Kiev. Mr. Wallace stressed that Britain provided these weapons to Ukraine so that they could use it on its territory. CNN quoted a Western official as saying that Ukraine had promised Britain would only use Storm Shadow missiles within its territory, not against Russian territory. The confirmation came after a number of media outlets quoted information from senior Western officials saying that Britain had supplied Storm Shadow missiles to Kiev. In terms of range, this missile is really a game changer, said a senior US military official. Ukraine has long asked the West for long-range missiles that can hit targets deep behind Russia's front lines, such as ammunition and fuel depots. However, the West was hesitant because of concerns that this weapon could escalate the conflict. These countries are facing a difficult choice when they want to support Ukraine's large-scale counter-attack plan. With the decision to supply Storm Shadow, Britain became the first country to provide long-range weapons to Ukraine. Before that, Britain was also the first country to commit to providing modern main battle tanks to Kiev. Reacting to the above information, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov warned that Russia will respond to this decision of the UK. Storm Shadow cruise missile was built by Britain and France in the 1990s. This type of missile is mainly launched from the air. It can hit targets up to 300 kilometers away, equivalent to American ground-based tactical missile systems ATACMS. According to the Washington Post, Britain hopes its move can convince the US to do the same. However, Washington is said to be concerned about the risk of exhausting ATACMS and the risk of escalation if Kiev uses this weapon to attack Russian territory. A leaked Pentagon document says that if this scenario happens, China may decide to provide military aid to Russia. Britain's move comes as Ukraine is gearing up for a large-scale counter-offensive campaign to regain territory controlled by Russia. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that the country's military needs more time for the counter-attack plan to ensure success with as few losses as possible. Meanwhile, the head of the WAGNER private military group, Yevgeny Prigozhin, said that Ukraine has begun a counterattack around the slopes of the eastern city of Bakhmut. Ukrainian pilots talk about Russian fighters posing the biggest threat to Kiev's plains in more than 14 months of hostilities. The BBC quoted Ukrainian pilots as saying that the Su-35 is considered Russia's most dangerous fighter. Accordingly, when meeting this fighter, the pilots of Kiev will be forced to maneuver and fly at a very low altitude to avoid being hit by the Su-35's air-to-air missiles. Some pilots admit that when Russia fires the aforementioned missiles, they will be forced to abandon the mission in progress and find ways to avoid being hit by the missile. The pilot, nicknamed Silk piloting the MiG-29, said that if he encountered the Su-35, he would have to lower the plane so low that he could see the treetops. Flying close to the ground is a very difficult task. You have to be very focused because at such a low altitude you won't have the time or space to get out safely when needed. In combat, Ukraine sends 2 fighter jets on a mission, one of which is responsible for striking ground targets while the other, like the MiG-29 piloted by Silk, shields teammates from risk of being attacked by enemy air-to-air missiles. However, the appearance of the Su-35 has caused a challenge for Ukrainian pilots because Russian fighters are always in a state of air patrol. Another MiG-29 pilot also admitted to the BBC that Russia's most dangerous fighter is the Su-35. We know the positions of the Russian air defense forces and we know their range, so we can calculate how long we can stay inside the airspace they control. But with Russian fighters, they have mobility. Russia has good coverage of the battlefield and knows when we are going to go to the front lines. Russian air patrols are able to determine the takeoff location of a jet even far away within Ukraine. Russia's R-37M missile has a range of 1520 km, but Ukraine's missile can only fly up to 50 kilometers before hitting a target in the air. This means that Russian planes can detect Ukrainian planes and shoot them down before they pose any threat. The Su-35 maintains altitude and uses the N-135 Urbisi radar to closely control the disputed airspace. The fighter is capable of coordinating the operations of other aircraft in the air, meaning it can perform the functions of an airborne early warning and control AWACS aircraft. In normal tracking mode, while scanning, the Irbis 3 radar can scan 120 degrees on both sides and detect 3 square meter sized targets within 200 kilometers. As a result, the Su-35 has the ability to see from above, lock onto Ukraine from a distance of hundreds of kilometers, then launch air-to-air missiles to attack Ukrainian aircraft. Artillery and missile reinforcement in Zaporizhia, as Russia claims it is eliminating Ukrainian positions. The Ukrainian official who heads the regional military administration in Zaporizhia, Yuri Malashko, said on Thursday that Russian troops shelled several towns and villages in the region, injuring civilians and damaging them. The Russians have announced they are eliminating Ukrainian military deployment points. Indirect fire in the area intensified in the face of what observers expected to be a Ukrainian counterattack. After 70 attacks, more than 36 destructions were recorded in 20 settlements, Malashko said on Telegram. The enemy fired 60 times from artillery, 5 times from multiple rocket launchers, carried out 3 airstrikes and 1 missile attack, and also carried out an attack from a UAV. Malashko said that in the village of Malakatarinica, 8 people were injured by cluster bullets. 3 of them were paramedics who arrived at the scene. The settlements of Huliapol, Orikhiv, and Stepnohursk were also damaged. The Russian Defense Ministry on Thursday released a statement claiming that Russian Air Defense Forces and Akatsiya self-propelled artillery batteries destroyed a temporary Ukrainian deployment point near Huliapol. The ministry stated that an ammunition depot of the 102nd Artillery Brigade of Ukraine was destroyed. To the south of Donetsk and Zaporizhia, air and artillery attacks launched by the Vostok Force Group led to the neutralization of enemy units near Vuhledar and Prichistinka Donetsk People's Republic, Malinivka, Huliapol, Novodnilivka and Kamiansky Zaporizhia region. Elsewhere in the south, the Kherson region, the Russian Air Force used powerful Fab-50 bombs to attack Ukrainian storage facilities, a Russian military blogger said.